Hi, and welcome to the Heuristics Podcast. I'm Kobe Ben Melech. What is sales? Don't we all know what that is? Some person trying to get you to cough up money, which is really just the value society has given to your past work for something. A hamburger, a dress, a car, a vacation. The object comes with a promise, and the promise is a feeling. Security, comfort, self-confidence, excitement, status. It's not entirely clear what it is we're buying, is it? Stated another way, it's not entirely clear what's being sold to us, right? This is why most of us find salespeople annoying. We feel like we're being manipulated, don't we? And the desperation in their voice. Why? Are they worried that with a little more time, we'll realize that we don't need the thing that they're selling? Just how are they trying to screw me flashes through our minds just before we abruptly hang up the phone on some insurance agent or real estate broker. But these people are necessary. In a certain sense, salespeople are those who give color to our lives. They break down our resistance through perseverance and savvy and introduce us to an enormous range of products and services that we didn't know the minute before. That is true of the iPhone, the homes we live in, the computers your company uses, or the yogurt you bought after tasting a sample at the supermarket. Your life, as a matter of experience, changes at the point of sale. Without salespeople, human innovation dies in embryo. Consider what Steve Jobs once said, especially the bit about Henry Ford. Some people say give the customers what they want, but that's not my approach. Our job is to figure out what they're going to want before they do. I think Henry Ford once said, if I'd asked customers what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. People don't know what they want until you show it to them. That's why I never rely on market research. Our task is to read things that are not yet on the page. According to Jobs, the best salespeople know us better than we do. And in technology, they also pull the rest of us into the future. Who are these people? What motivates them? What will sales look like tomorrow? To help me sort through these questions, I invited Mendel Gniwisch, CEO of stor.ai, which helps grocery chains grow their e-commerce businesses. Mendel is also a member of Chabad, a stream of Orthodox Judaism that has a proselytizing bent, if only towards non-practicing Jews. The reason I decided to talk to Mendel is because of something he said while we were having lunch a few months ago that just about made my brain jump out of my head and start breakdancing on my skull. He was telling me about his days in New York when he would go around high-powered law offices, trying to convince Jews to recite some of the morning prayers. And he said that this was the best training ground for salespeople on earth. Forget Harvard Business School. Chabad has the answers. I was tickled, to say the least, but then I started to think about it. Consider the challenge. You get maybe a second to convince a stranger to listen to a sales pitch. That really ought to take a lifetime of investigation to fully explain. And you have to find the psychological shortcut towards a transaction. If you can make that work, well, Mendel doesn't sound so crazy now, does he? There's no video this time. I screwed that one up. Apologies for that. But with that preamble now wrapped up, here is my conversation with Mendel.
First of all, good to see you.
See you too.
And I'll have introduced you before this. But I think it would be good to start with just for you to take a moment to talk about who you are and what you're up to these days.
All right. So start at the beginning, I guess.
Start with your name.
My name is Mendel Gniwisch. Really a global citizen. I know it sounds a little bit crazy to say that, but I was...
But you truly are. You have you have a crazy story.
I do. I was born in South Africa.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, in Johannesburg. My grandfather, my mother's father, is Israeli, and he started in the diamond business when he was in his early 20s, and he went off on his own probably 1 or 2 years after starting, and he moved to South Africa to
Wait,
cut
just
stones.
move the mic a little bit closer to your.
Yeah.
There you
So is that better?
Oh yeah.
So he moved to South Africa to start mining and cutting stones, and he actually moved a few hundred Israeli families down to South Africa with him. And he became a pretty successful diamond dealer down there. And so my mom was from there, and she was.
What year was this? More or
in,
less.
it's got to be in the 70s
Wow.
when he moved down there, 70s, 80s. So he moves down there, and then my dad was actually doing Chabad shlichut, so work, outreach work for Jewish people in South Africa.
Wait, and just for anyone that has no idea what that means, what is Chabad?
Chabad is a religious Jewish type of religion, or it's a sect within religious Judaism that focuses on, at its core, just the commandment of loving your fellow Jew as yourself. So that's like the basis of Chabad and Lubavitch, and so he was.
Wait, and does it do Chabad? You're still a member of
Yeah.
Chabad, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And it looks like they follow more or less the same precepts as every other Jew or Orthodox Jew, or
At its core, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. So, religious Judaism is pretty strict, right? There are some basic rules about how you go about being a religious Jew, but then beyond that, there's the kind of flavoring of that, right? And there are different flavors to how you can be a religious Jew.
okay.
And so, Chabad and Lubavitch focuses on. It's a very spiritual and I would say Kabbalistic way of looking at it. And
Again, just for us know-nothings of here, Kabbalistic is in reference to the Kabbalah, which is
which is this is kind of the secrets of the Torah. This is like the behind the scenes, or this is the looking at not just the commandments that we have and all the laws and the rules and regulations of how you're supposed to be a religious Jew, but rather looking at the depths of the why. What is God? Discovering that and studying that, and why it's important and why we exist, and really bringing a lot more meaning and flavor to what we do. Whereas traditional religious Jews focus more on the commandments and studying the Talmud, and that's very it's very focused on the law, and not so much of why we do things or why is it important and
so
what's
Kabbalah,
our relationship to God. So Kabbalah is really what is God, and trying to understand him and trying to understand why he created the world and what's our place in it.
So that's like the spiritual grounding, the wellspring for then the laws and the commandments and the actions that Jews are supposed to do. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is this a text that you're only allowed to read or supposed to read when you're 40?
The Kabbalah itself, so there's the Zohar, which that is something that you're really supposed to study when you're 40, and it's kind of really, really deep, and you really have to have a lot of knowledge before you get into that to even begin to understand what's going on over there.
No, what kind of knowledge do you need to have?
You have to have religious knowledge. You have to have understandings of lots of other Jewish books and things like that to really understand, really get a concept really of what's going on. There'd be a lot of, if you studied Kabbalah, there would be a lot of things that you just not only wouldn't be able to comprehend, but just wouldn't really know what's going on at all.
Okay.
So you really have to have a lot of understanding of, if you tried to study year 4 of bio, wanted to be a doctor, year 4, year 5, before, studying year 1, you really wouldn't be able to do it. You just wouldn't understand what's going on. So you really have to have a lot of knowledge before you get into Kabbalah. But there's something called Chassidut, which is started by The Baal Shem Tov started it, which is like 400 years ago. And then in Chabad, it started by the first Chabad Rebbe, which was called the Alter Rebbe. He was the Baal HaTanya, maybe some people might know about him. That's about 300 and something years ago.
Where was this?
This was in Russia.
Okay.
And so he founded Chabad and Lubavitch. So Chabad and Lubavitch are one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
Chabad is actually the acronym for Chachma, Bina, and Dat, which is the philosophy of Chabad, and Lubavitch is actually the city that it was founded in. And Lubavitch comes from the word Luba, which is love. So this is, again, back to where we started of, how Chabad is about love and the commandment to love your fellow as yourself. So
wait, and just a couple more questions on Chabad. I think I read on my trusted source for everything is Wikipedia, that there's about 100,000 Chabad people around the world. Is that more or less? You have no idea.
I've never checked. What I know is it makes sense.
But what also explains? I mean, it appears that they have great access to powerful people. Right? You see images of rabbis meeting with Vladimir Putin and American presidents, and how does that work?
So, from a historical perspective, we have these 7 Chabad rabbis. The last one is Rabbi Schneerson, who we you see pictures of him everywhere, especially if you're in Israel.
Right.
You see his picture and all the. He's kind of plastered everywhere as the Rebbe and Mashiach and all these things.
Mashiach just means is a Hebrew word for Messiah.
For the Messiah, right? So, Rabbi Schneerson came to the U.S. in the, I think in the 40s, from escaping, Russia and the Second World War, and he was. Following his father-in-law, who was the 6th Chabad Rebbe. And what they were doing is they started a movement where people would go out and rabbis would go out to different communities in different cities around the world to explain Judaism, to bring it to the masses so that Jewish people could understand Judaism. And many Jewish people after the Second World War were leaving Judaism. As we know, they were leaving religion. And so started this movement. And today there are probably 6,000 Chabad rabbis in every city in the world. They say where you could find Coke, you could find Chabad. And so there are rabbis in every city in the world, and they are creating Jewish centers and bringing Judaism to Jewish people, and really with a different flavor, because like we discussed, Judaism at its basic function is a kind of a religion of laws. But with Chabad, we go a little bit deeper than that, and we talk about the reasoning, and we go a little bit into giving purpose. Everyone's talking today about purpose, living a life of purpose, right? And so understanding where we fit into the scheme of things in God's creation of the world and why we exist, I think is very important, and is very relevant to today, right? Where people today are looking for a little bit more than the 9 to 5, than the rat race, and why am I here? Why do I exist? And why am I important? And so the Rebbe started this. And today there are thousands and thousands of Chabad rabbis all over the world. They're there as volunteers, so nobody's paying them. There's no kind of.
How do they live?
They live through donations of people who come by. They have to fundraise, and sometimes they make it. Sometimes they're successful and they build big communities, and sometimes they just grind it out for 50, 60 years out there. And they just and they're driven by a mission. They're driven by a love that they were kind of embedded with. That every Jew is precious, and we have to help them both spiritually and physically many times. And so they become community leaders, and that's why you see Beryl Lazar, who's the chief rabbi of Russia.
Right.
He is he's made his way up in the ranks over there as well, and has met Putin, and he's somewhat of a friend. And then you see how rabbis across the world, these are people who are coming on a mission to help people and work their way up in politics if need be for different, they either need something for the city or for the community or for the country or for Jewry or for any and so they move into politics here and there, not for political reasons, but for their community. And many times they reach the highest echelons of politics. If you look at Washington, the Chabad house in Washington, Jared Kushner was praying there on Fridays, and all sorts of lobbyists and politicians that you would have a hard time getting to.
Right.
These are people that are going to the regular Chabad house on a Friday night, and that's just a great meeting place.
Right. So it's politics in the service of love.
Well, the political aspect of it is not for politics, right? It's let's say you have a Chabad house and you're trying to get a permit to build a big building, right? So you have to get into the government, you have to meet the people in the city, and that's at a small scale. If you're trying to in Ukraine, they built a huge complex, right? And so you start to go up in higher levels of government. And let's say many times, somebody will end up, unfortunately, in a prison. So the Chabad rabbi will try to take him out, right? So work with the Israeli government and then work with the local government and try. And so friendships are created and things like that. So there's nothing political about it, and there's no political agenda attached to it whatsoever. It's all about being there for Jews when they need them.
Yeah. Did you find it problematic the way I phrased it? I mean,
no. I'm just saying it's not. I just wanted to clarify. It's not politics.
Yeah.
They're not there for the politics.
Sure.
They couldn't care less.
And the proselytizing or the outreach is only for Jews, right? It's not trying to convert.
No.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the environment in which your mother grew up and your father.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so my dad moves to South Africa to get back to the start of this.
Yeah.
And he falls in love with my mom, I guess. And then
I guess.
Well, I wasn't really there to experience it, so I'm just assuming. But they fall in love, and then they get married. And shortly afterwards, my dad moved to Montreal, where he's from, to start a diamond business in Montreal, diamond cutting business. His parents were in the jewelry business, so inexpensive jewelry, and not really costume jewelry, but like maybe a couple $100 per item.
Okay.
And so he started a diamond cutting factory in Montreal. That lasted a bunch of years, and we moved to New York and back to Montreal. And
and you were already born by this point?
Yeah, I was born in South Africa. When my parents were living there, and then I moved with them to Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the late 90s, my dad and my uncles started the first online jewelry store. And so
in the world.
It was called started off called buyjewel.com. Then they were acquired, and they bought the name ice.com. They were acquired by Idea Lab in California. And it's Bill Gross. He was one of the big guys back then. He's still pretty big.
Bill Gross. Why is that the Pimco guy? No,
could be.
Okay, sorry.
I haven't followed him.
Sorry, Bill Gross.
And so they were acquired by Idea Lab, and then after the bubble burst in the 90s, late 90s, they actually acquired the business back and built it back in Montreal. So we moved to LA when they were acquired.
Oh, wow.
And we moved back to Montreal. And they eventually sold the business. And one of the perks of being part of this Chabad community is that you have communities all over the world and schools all over the world that you can attend. So I basically took full advantage of that, and I went to school in in the beginning it wasn't that interesting. I went to Iowa for 2 years. But then I went to Argentina, to Buenos Aires.
How old were you?
I was 16 when I went to Buenos Aires. And then I went to LA, and then I went to New York. And then I basically, in the summers, volunteered for a bunch of very interesting things. I did 2 summer camps in South Africa. Then I did a tour of 56 prisons where I was a traveling rabbi, because the prison system in America has chaplains for every prison, but because of the kind of lack of Jews in most cities in America, they'll have a Christian chaplain or a Muslim chaplain or both, but no rabbi. And so every summer, Chabad has a program where, 19, 20-year-old boys go out in pairs of 2, and they travel from one prison to the next to bring Judaism to the Jews that are incarcerated. So I visited 56 prisons in the state of Florida.
Over what time
Over
span?
a month.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, we were visiting multiple prisons a day.
First of all, I'm shocked that there are that many prisons in the state of Florida. 56 in a
Yeah, that
month?
was just northern Florida. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was from Orlando north. So we did Orlando, then we did the East Coast, like Daytona, and then we drove west all the way to Pensacola, I think it's called, is like the last city in Florida on the Panhandle, and then we drove back down and ended in Tampa.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And how old were you again? You were 19, 20, you said?
I was 19.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I did another summer of outreach in Mexico, and then a year of volunteering between Sydney and Bariloche, which is southern Argentina. And then I came to Israel,
When
where
was
I
this?
met my wife.
When was this? And how old were you?
This was in 2013, and got married here in Israel. And
What brought you here?
we were coming often. My family was coming to Israel often as tourists. And I like to hang out here. I'd finished my my outreach and my volunteering for the year,
Yeah.
and I had a few months off, so I kind of hung out in Israel. We were hanging out in Jerusalem, where the shuk, the market, was like really just getting started. There was like one bar there. It used to be a classic market, and then kind of turned into this wild club of sorts. We were there right at the beginning.
And again, for the uninitiated, the shuk is the open air market.
Yeah.
I mean, there are 2 open air markets. There's one in the old city of Jerusalem, and then there's, I think the one you're referring to is more.
It's about 20 minutes walk from the old city.
Right.
And it's an old market, and open air market with a bunch of stands, and they used to sell vegetables and fish, and today they're selling different craft beers and craft foods, and it's kind of it's a really cool place.
Yeah.
So we were hanging out there, and I was introduced to my wife through a mutual friend, and we got married, and we moved to Montreal, where I started working in startups right away. Starting off as a junior in analytics, and then got into finance a little, and then I really thrived in the business development area, where I founded a business together with someone, and after about 5 years of living in Montreal, my wife had enough of the cold, and she said, let's move back to Israel. So that's what brought us here. So it was it was a combination. Well, she was saying that for 5 years, but what really got me excited was I read the book, The Startup Nation, and I just felt like I want to be a part of it. So I had some experience in the startup world, and so I said, this is a place for me.
And today you are the CEO of stor.ai. So
yeah.
First, what does stor.ai do?
We enable grocery retailers
in plain English,
online. Man. Yeah. We if you're a grocer, and you're an offline grocer, a classic grocer, and you want to sell online, we can basically give you everything you need end to end to sell online. So that's a website, that's a backend to manage it, a CMS, a CRM to manage your customers, picking application to pick orders in the store, get them delivered, all that.
How many customers?
We have 300 customers today.
300. Wow.
Yeah.
One would think that most groceries are online by now, but I guess not.
I wouldn't say most. It depends which region you're looking at, really. In the U.S., most are online, but not most on their own platform or a white label platform. Many of them are Instacart or some sort of marketplace where they don't actually own the customer data and they don't own the interaction and all that. So we're actually giving them control of their data. We're giving them the really the control of their future, of their business, of their e-commerce. Today, grocery e-commerce is 10% online.
Right.
And we're projecting it to be between 20 and 30% in the next couple of years.
In the next couple of years?
Yeah.
Double or triple what it is today?
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. All right. So I invited you here and I asked you, obviously, all those questions to set up about your background for a reason, right? I mean, you and I wanted to talk to you about a claim you made a couple months ago when you and I were having lunch. And it was something to the effect of, correct me if I'm wrong, but in your time in New York, right, you were going around hunting essentially for secular Jews to put on their tefillin, which is like this. I mean, how would you describe tefillin?
Tefillin is one of the commandments that every Jew is commanded in the Bible to put strap a box on your arm.
Male Jews, right?
Male Jews, yeah. To put a box on your arm with some.
You brought one
Talmud.
here, so
yeah, it's here. We could show you afterwards, or I can show you now. So it's one of these.
You can't stop, can you?
No, we cannot. So it's one of these. You would put this on your arm.
Yeah.
This has some scrolls in it and some parchment with some of the Torah written in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd have another one for your head. We put these on.
Right.
And this is one of the commandments. And the reason for this is to connect the one on your arm is representing your heart, and the one on your head is representing your mind. And you should connect for a moment. Connect and devote your heart and your mind to God for a moment. And that's the idea of this.
And this is done in the mornings, right?
And this is done in the mornings, but typically in the mornings, but can be done until nightfall.
Okay. So you told me when we were having lunch that you were out in New York City, right? Even
I was in New York, but I did this throughout, my childhood and young adulthood. All of these places that I went to that we described, this is one of the main things that we were doing, was putting these on Jewish people. Got it.
So you were out there on the streets hunting for secular Jews, people that don't do this regularly, and to put this on, right, to fulfill some commandment to God. And you said something to the effect of that this was the best training ground for salespeople that anyone could possibly imagine, and when someone says something like that to me, that's Kobe bait. I'm checking the tank, the scuba tank. Is there enough oxygen? Like I'm diving into those waters like full. You can't stop me there. So we had a back and forth, but we ran out of time, right? In that lunch, you have a company to run. I had a day job back then, but that obviously that conversation stuck with me, and so I want to revisit that claim that you made. And I mean, for three real reasons. I mean, the first is that I have a million questions to ask you, naturally. The second is, I think that, when I was thinking about this, and I think there are parallels to, what you were doing then and then versus the quotidian nature of sales, right? That if you imagine, for example, like our natural resistance to salespeople. So you get a phone call from this cell phone company and someone says, oh, we have a deal, $5 for this month, and you're like, oh, great, and you're entertaining this conversation, and all of a sudden you've said yes to this, and you didn't realize, but you've signed on for like a 36-month contract. You're like, oh my God, why did I answer the phone? Why didn't I just hang up, right? I mean, the same could be said for someone like you, right? It's like when you're out there and you're like, okay, what does this guy want from me? Does he makes me put on the tefillin? It's like, and then you want me to? Is this all you want, or do you want me to come on Saturday morning and burn my weekend and go to synagogue and so on? Like, oh God, why did I even entertain this conversation with Mendel? So my point is, I'm sure there must be lessons to extract from your experience that are generally applicable to, the modern business world. And I think the third thing is, what's also really cool about you is that you are now a CEO of essentially an e-commerce startup, right?
Right.
And I'm very curious to hear what you think about the nature of sales when more and more of our economy is going online, as you said, right? It's grocery online shopping is going to double or triple in the next few years, which is pretty wild to think about. So I thought we should start with the beginning, like the real beginning, and that is in the womb, I think, even. I mean, do you think that sales is innate or it can be learned as this go?
I think that sales can absolutely be learned. I think that you have a classic kind of sales type.
What is that type?
It's. I'm not saying that it's. You'll have like what you'll see in a movie, a car salesman, or kind of the what you'll find in Mad Men. If you look at Don Draper kind of thing, really smooth and kind of gonna can sell you anything, can sell snow to the Eskimos kind of guy, right?
Yeah.
But really, sales at its core, and this is if you go back to what we were doing, right? Everyone that I was growing up with was going out into the streets, into people's offices and whatnot, and asking people to put on tefillin, right?
Yeah.
And there was no type over there; it was everyone. And so, really, at its core,
but certainly some did better than others, right?
Yeah, but I don't think it was personality. I think it was conviction. And so, when you really believe in something, and you really believe that it's good for somebody else, and you want to share that with them, then you can be successful as a salesperson, right? So sales is, especially today, it's not, we're not selling people, the Brooklyn Bridge. We're selling people things that should be valuable to them, right? And we believe that it's valuable to them. And something this personal to you, which is your religion and your belief, and you believe that it's good for the person that you are talking to, and that you believe that bringing purpose to that person's life is beneficial for that person, then you have kind of a really strong argument to make to that person, right? I don't want any of your money. I don't want anything from you. I want 1 minute of your time, because I believe that this is important. I think that you connecting to God for 1 minute right now, and saying that you're here for a reason, you're here for a purpose, and you want to thank God for what you have, and ask Him for goodness in the future, and you believe that, there's a really strong argument to make. So if somebody believes in God, then you're already halfway there. If he doesn't believe in God, or he's worse, maybe, or worse for this case, but if he's angry at God, then you really have a real hill to climb. And that's what we were doing.
But I would imagine that salespeople are constantly in the latter scenario that you painted, right? That especially in high-tech companies, products are born every day, services are born every day that no one had ever used before. And I would imagine the overwhelming initial response from potential clients is resistance. We're like, well, what the hell is this? I don't know.
Right.
Why do I need this? What's in it for you? And why do I? So, yeah, I'm wondering how far conviction takes you, and how useful it is to be innately good at it. Like, so for example, I had over for dinner a friend of ours. He's now the head of sales at a growing startup in Israel. And some of the things he was telling me was absolutely wild. Like, I asked him, what drives you? When do you feel most alive at your job? And he says he just loves the high stakes meeting to close a deal. He even gave me this example. It's like sometimes he pictures himself buying a Rolex for $25,000 and then reselling that for like $1,000 more. And not because he wants to pocket $1,000. Like, he says you can go to the company, whatever company it is that buys and resells Rolexes. But it's more for the fact of creating value out of nothing. Like, and what struck me about this was, that's a very, maybe he didn't even mean to say this, but it's quite a deep thing to say, right? I'm creating value out of nothing. And B, I mean, these are the kind of fantasies that he's having, right? These are the visions. Like, if you ask me, like, what are my fantasies? I want to be sitting and talking to Dave Chappelle about his life, right? I'm not thinking about buying and reselling Rolexes for $1,000 more. That tells me something, that he's wired differently than I am, and it must have been like that from a very early age, and he must have an advantage over anyone that has conviction. You know what I mean?
So we're really thinking about if a human, that has certain qualities is better equipped than somebody else for sales, right? So I do believe that is the case, especially when you're selling something like technology, or you're selling something that you really need to be passionate about, right? If we go back to this for a second, right, this is about something that you believe in deeply. Yeah. Right? And so when you believe in something deeply, it's a little bit different than if you're selling something that's you can sell this technology or sell that technology. Right. But I think fundamentally what you learn from doing this is, first of all, you learn to go out of your comfort zone. You learn to be in a place where, you're 16, 17, 18 years old. And just to give you an example, I was in Montreal one year, and I was going to try meet a certain individual who was very unhappy with religious people as a whole. And I guess I didn't really care if he was happy or unhappy or just upset at religious people or religion, right? I was there for one reason. And so every single Friday, I went to his office and I asked to meet him. And every single Friday, he told me no. And then I finally met him, like after 6 months of going to his office every single Friday. And then we got into, the first thing he did was he yelled at me. Get the hell out of here. Why are you coming back to my office every week? And I said, I just want a minute of your time, and I don't want any of your money. And I want to do something that I think is good for you. And so we opened up the conversation. So there was a level of persistence there. There was a level of, I'm bringing something that's really valuable to you, or at least I believe it's valuable to you, right? Mm-hmm. And I just didn't take no for an answer, because it didn't cost me anything. It cost me my time. I went out there every week, but that was it. It was persistence. There was conviction. There was something that I believed was good. I wanted him to partake in this, so I just went after him one week after the next, and eventually we became friends, right? Because once we got over that initial hump, and he saw that I didn't really want any of his money or anything. It was just interesting conversation. We could have a good debate. We could put on tefillin or not. We kind of got past that. And similarly, one of my closest friends today is a lawyer from Manhattan. And the same thing. We kind of went to his office every week, and this guy's a lawyer who charges $800 an hour kind of guy, $1,000 an hour. And we were pretty much bothering him on a weekly basis until he opened up the door and kind of.
And those $800,000 an hour, those are stressful because if you're going to charge that much money, it means the people on the other hand, A, have the kind of money to spend on that, and B, probably demand some serious results if they're going to be spending that kind of dough, right?
Yeah, absolutely. These are big lawyers. They're well paid, and they take a cut of every deal that they make, and they're hot shots, and they're high flying. So a 17-year-old walking into their office, 18 years old, on a weekly basis, saying "Let's put on tefillin" is just not. It's not typical. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You really need to overcome the first few times. You need to overcome that fear. Like, hey, who am I? Why should this guy listen to me? And then you kind of get into this groove, and you just do it, and you go for it over and over again.
So it's interesting. I mean, you're talking about conviction there. Do you become someone else? Are you still you? Or you're just this avatar for the mission of, getting Jews closer to God? I mean, who are you in that moment?
You're absolutely you. You're absolutely you. There's nothing about you that has to change for that.
But my question is more like, are you still the same Mendel that's walking around, going to wherever, going to school, going to the gym, going to work?
Yeah,
You're still the same guy?
It's an element of you, absolutely. It's an element of you. I mean, it's you going out and trying to do something and trying to accomplish something.
So you don't adopt a persona?
No, I mean, at least not me.
Mm-hmm.
At least not me. So for me, it was quite simple. I'm going to meet this individual because I want to put on tefillin with him, and have an interesting conversation. No, so I didn't have to, and I think that in sales in general, like if we take this back to sales, right? I think anyone can do sales well if you follow the process of, you have to make the calls. I had to go to this guy's office every week for 6 months before he yelled at me and then had a conversation with me. You have to follow this process of reaching out, being respectful, just sticking to your guns, and this is what I want to offer you. And I actually believe it's beneficial to you. That's why I'm doing this, right? If you're trying to sell something, I can't really speak much for if you're trying to sell something that's not valuable, because then, you could be selling like all these little things that you find on Instagram that they're just pushing you, right? Buy this thing for your ears. We'll get there. Eyes, right? That's totally different kind of. But when we're actually talking about selling something like cybersecurity or something to manage your finances, or something, for your future of your business, like when we talk about our e-commerce platform, we sell that to retailers. We are fully convicted that they actually would benefit from doing white label e-commerce, from doing it on their own rather than outsourcing it to a marketplace. And we know that we have a great solution, and we can give them value. So we're coming in with something that's very core to us. We believe this. We believe it's good for the future of their business. It's essential for the future of their business.
Yeah.
And so we can sell that.
So when you went to you jumped around so many different places. How did you know what your market was? Who did you go after? How did you know who to go after? Or was it just you were just shooting all over the place?
When it came to religion, when it came to Judaism, we were just looking for Jewish people. It didn't matter. We would just walk around, go into an office, say, "Are there any Jewish people here?" And they would look at us with this kind of weird look. We're not talking about in Israel, right? We're talking about in Argentina, in New York, LA, Sydney, South Africa. You walk in and people are kind of giving you this, maybe. Why do you want to know?
Yeah, I'm on their side, right? That this sounds absolutely nuts.
Yeah, and so what we would say is, look, we just we want to do a good deed, right? There's something here that we want we're looking for Jewish people. There's a commandment for Jewish people to do something. We just want to engage with them. We want to give them opportunity to do something good, and we're not looking for any money. We're just a few minutes of their time. Sometimes they'd send us away.
Yeah.
And then we would try to find another way in.
What does that mean?
I don't know. Check the next week if the same receptionist is there. Just walk in, meet someone in the hallway in front of the office, say, hey, are there any Jewish people here? We're looking to do something good. And then they're like, hey, yeah, I'm Jewish. And then you walk in with them, and the receptionist kind of gives you this dirty look. But it's what it is. You're there for one thing. You got to get it done. And so that was the beginning of the process, right? Just finding the Jewish people. And then when you do find them, it's kind of split, but typically like in a place like, New York, super secular, right? Often they were kind of unhappy at first when they saw us there. Like, what do you guys want from us? They probably thought we were there for some money or something, or collecting for something, right. Some organization. Well, we weren't. We're just like, look, Judaism has 613 commandments. One of them is to do this, to put on tefillin, to connect your heart and your mind to God for a moment, to thank Him. Maybe you'll do it because you believe in God. Maybe you'll do it because your grandfather did it. Maybe you'll do it for the continuation of Judaism for the future, for your children, because you want them to be part of this Jewish people and you don't want them to assimilate entirely.
Yeah.
And so, these conversations usually led to interesting discussion, sometimes for an hour or two in the middle of a busy workday, but that's what it was. And and then we built amazing relationships with most of the people.
I mean, that's what's so wild about this is that people gave you that much time out of their day, right? And to an outsider, someone that puts on that piece of leather on their arm and over their head, it looks, without the context, right, without the history, it just looks like your neurotic behavior that you do every morning. You got to put on this piece of leather, and to a secular Jew who's just completely written that off, they're like, why are you wasting my time with this? You probably need a long time to explain what it is that you're asking them to do, and yet that initial resistance. I mean, you have a few seconds to get over that. I mean, how did you know what to say in each moment to break down those defenses?
Yeah, we didn't have a sales script.
No, I know.
Right.
You were 18 or something,
Yeah,
right?
well, it started much younger. I started the first time when I was 13, 14, and then...
Which is even wilder. Okay, you're 14 years old. I'm sure, right, that there's so much you didn't know about how to explain why it is that Jewish men do this every morning.
So I think at a very young age, we were typically having success with people who didn't have a lot of resistance to it. Kind of just, yeah, sure. I have a minute. How long is it going to take? Right?
To talk to the creator of the universe. Yeah.
Yeah. It takes a minute, right? Just say thank you, say a prayer, say thank you to God, and ask Him for whatever you want. Take a minute of your day. And usually believing Jews or people that believe in God, maybe not practicing or religious in any way. And then I think more of the intellectual debate came as we grew up a little bit and we had more knowledge. We were typically set up, I would say, in a kind of, we had a leg up in those conversations just because we were studying religion all day. And we typically were meeting people who didn't really give a damn, or, maybe read, 20 minutes of Jewish text in their whole life.
Right.
So, we had some good arguments, but I think what's interesting and why I think Chabad is so successful. So I think you said Chabad has 100,000 members globally, right?
According to Wikipedia.
Yeah, but if you think about the amount of Chabad centers in the world and the amount of Jews that they're serving, it's in the millions for sure, right? Because every Chabad center has a couple hundred or thousand members, and then people that fly, every Israeli who flies everywhere in the world stops in a Chabad center for a meal or for something. So the reach of Chabad is much larger. Trying to think about why I just got into that, but
the success of Chabad, I think.
Yeah. So right. So if we're looking at why Chabad is so successful, It's because it's based on this first commandment. It's not the first commandment, but it's the commandment to love your fellow Jew as yourself. So it's unconditional love. It's just love because you're Jew.
Yeah.
And so that when you break it down, when you get to that point, right, it's such a powerful connection. I'm going to love you regardless of who you are. And then this doing one commandment is another thing that's actually unique to Chabad, whereas a lot of religious people will want you to be either fully religious or not. I think Chabad takes a view of there are 613 commandments, and you could connect to God in many ways. And if you do one, which is tefillin, or any other one, if you respect your parents, if you give charity, if you do any of the commandments, you're connecting to God. So,
how Christian of you guys?
Well, where did Christianity get most of its values, right? I don't want to go back that far, but
okay, but you raise an interesting point though about conviction, and I want to tie this to the modern case, right? So you have, on the Chabad side, you have a scenario in which you deeply believe in something, and there's this otherworldly nature to it. So it's really, really important that you go out there and you do as good a job as you can trying to convince people of I'm going to use this word crudely, but just for the purposes of this conversation, this product, right? Convince them that the product is worth their time. And yet in the modern business world, no such product really exists in the same vein as Chabad and what they're trying to do. You have companies and people that work there that really believe in what the product is doing and is bringing good to companies and consumers and so on. But you have alienation of workers, right? So even if the product is amazing, or a salesperson makes a deal and then they sort of walk away from that relationship, right? That gets passed on to a bunch of other people, right? That's just the way companies are set up. And they don't see the benefit and how it changes the lives of their customers for the good, hopefully. So the practice there becomes commoditized, right? So a salesperson in the modern business world, the incentives are different, right? It's not like I'm here to change other people's lives for the good, which is how it is in the Chabad case. It's more of, well, I've got a job to do. They're paying me, a bonus for every deal that I make. So how would you measure conviction in the everyday sense?
Well, I would say that I think that successful people in success in sales need some sort of conviction in the product that you're selling.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to be successful at selling a personal finance management app, right, I really have to understand how this is beneficial to my user, right? I think that you can save 10% of your income annually and be, essentially 10% wealthier if you follow a few steps. And this application can help you do that, right? So then if you sell that to an individual, you believe that you're helping them and you're going to be, bringing positive change to their life. If you're selling B2B software, the statistics will show that with your software, they can be 3% more efficient, 3% to the bottom line, right? So a net 3%. So you believe that, you see that, you know it, and so that you could sell it. If you, I don't think people would do very well in sales if they sold B2B software, which actually increased, a net loss of 1%, right, over and over again.
But still, I
think you have some psychos that can do that, right? Like they don't give a damn, but that's just not. It's not good business.
The point I'm trying to make, though, is that 3% on the bottom line for some company that you don't really know who these people are. Sure, yeah. There's an intrinsic good that's being done there, but it's so hard to feel, right, on a deep level, that you're actually changing the lives of these people, especially if you walk away from the deal once it's closed. You know
It's
what I mean?
definitely not as impactful
Right.
as,
Right.
as bringing value and meaning to someone's life.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I think that's another reason why Chabad is so successful.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it, almost maybe 6,000 centers around the world,
Yeah.
touching millions of Jews a year, right? And doing good for millions of Jews a year. It's because it is such a unique kind of product, if you want to talk about it like that,
Yeah.
that we're selling. We're selling love. We're selling purpose and meaning and
Right.
and relationships. And if you go to your, people are so lonely today. Everywhere, people are so lonely. If you can become part of an amazing community where they're not asking you for money, they're asking you to participate and to come and join and be part of something that's bigger than you. That's such a powerful thing to sell.
Yeah.
With very little cost, right? It's just your time.
Yeah.
And so
it makes me think that, there's obviously the old adage, I think, that sales is a relationship business, right? And it kind of speaks to what you're talking about, because you can only know how to sell the thing that or if what you're selling is relevant to your customer, is if you can actually see and quantify in the way in which it changes their lives for the better, right? And so do you imbue that with your salespeople? Do they have to get to know their customers in such a way that they really...
We definitely think about what their pains are, right? Like how are we solving their pains, and are we thinking about them as individuals? So for example, our CMO comes from a B2C world. He thinks about, how to market to people as people, not as corporations, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where he's coming from. And so we definitely think about that, right? And we think about where's the benefit and how are we going to bring value to the individual and to the business. Many times we'll address that, right? We'll address, I think, individuals buying software for large corporations have lots of fear, right? It's like, what if it's not the right software? What if it doesn't work? That's the end of their career at this position, right? So
Yeah.
it's a huge decision for the individual, and you definitely have to think about the individual and how they can overcome their personal hurdle of, okay, we're going to change everything in this corporation, this organization, because we're buying a new software, even if they're the CIO. But if this doesn't work, we're pretty screwed. Or as an individual, they're kind of screwed, right? Maybe they didn't do the right due diligence. Maybe they didn't, choose the company wisely. And so on a personal level, there's definitely something that you need to go in and ensure the individual, not just the corporation, but the individual, that they're making the right decision for their organization.
Do you ever think about, this is two questions and really wrapped into one, but do you ever think about your experience as a customer, whether it's, some business selling something to your business or just someone selling to you individually, what that's like? And, growing up and all those experiences, with Chabad, did that change the way you view salespeople, other salespeople? Do you view them differently? Do you have the same sort of allergic reaction that most of us, I certainly do, when you get a phone call, you're like, oh God, why do they want to sell me something? How are they trying to screw me here? Do you have that?
I think that people who deal in sales a lot should have some level of respect or recognition for the person reaching out to them. I'm typically quite cordial with the person on the other line, and I usually wish them luck. Or if it's like an email, I get so many emails, many of them I'll just delete, but oftentimes I'll say something like, hey, I appreciate your good effort. This was just not for us. It's not the right time. Or if it's a phone call, I'll say, this product is not relevant for me, but good luck and I wish you luck. And because, we know how difficult it is.
You ever scream at them like they screamed at you?
I think it's more Israeli for them to scream at you than the U. I haven't had a U.S. Kind of telemarketer yell at me on the phone yet.
No, but you yelling at them.
No, we don't yell. We don't yell.
No. Forget about
just you.
Yeah.
No. Well, the actually the time that we got into a yelling match when I was asking this guy to put on tefillin, he was yelling at me, and so we just countered with yelling at him. Actually, funnily enough, just to to like take the air out of the room.
You yelled at him back?
Yeah, I said, "Why are you yelling at me?"
You really are nuts, man.
Yeah, a little bit. But I think it was funny at the end, right? There was nothing confrontational about it. It was kind of like, get the hell out of my office. Like, why are you yelling at me? It's like, just relax here. We're not trying to kill you. We're not trying to steal your money or anything. We just have a conversation for 30 seconds. Yeah.
You know what's cool though? It's cool that you said that some of those people that you pestered for so long became friends of yours.
Very close friends, yeah.
And that makes me wonder what actually happens psychologically at the point of sale. Like, is there just some sort of meeting of the minds there that have you just connected in some real sense with someone?
Well, I think you'll find this also in long sales cycles where you'll become friends with the person you're selling to. Absolutely.
Even though there's the prospect of money changing hands looming all over that.
Yeah, because typically when you're selling something, even if there's tons of money changing hands, there's the promise for value, right? There's the value is larger than the money, right? So I'm telling you that if you spend $10 million, you're going to get $50 million worth of value. So it's more of an investment than you're not throwing $10 million out the door. So you create this relationship, and the money is almost insignificant, right? Because usually you're selling, if you go into a few months of a sales process, you're selling to somebody who has the funds or a corporation that has the money to spend. Otherwise, you wouldn't get there, right? You'd get 2 calls in, and then the person would be, we really don't have a budget for this, right? So you're talking to an organization that has the budget, and you're going to deliver, let's say, 10 times the value of the investment, right? And so on an ROI base, here's your 10x, or you'll make on your annual investment an EBITDA of 10%, 20%, 50%, right? And so you're selling value. You believe in that, and if you go a couple months into a sales process, typically the person you're selling to also believes that, right? So you've brought them to a point where you both believe that this product, or that this product will improve their business by X%, and now you go down the path of working out the details and maybe a little bit of negotiation, but it's the fact that the value is going to be delivered is unquestionable. You will receive value from this, and therefore the individual will spend the money, or the corporation, and you can create a great friendship with the person, right?
Right. And it's like a test of ethics there, because you're making a promise, right?
Absolutely.
You're going to get 5x on your investment. And if it actually pans out that way, then that person, let's say it's a year or 2 years from now, will actually remember you as the guy that made that damn promise and actually worked out in that. And so he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
You can trust this person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's wild.
That's reputation is everything when it comes to sales, right?
Right.
You want to make sure that you have good sales reputation. You want to make sure that people know, especially when you're in an industry, right? You're selling always to the same industry. If you're in the health industry or in the grocery industry, which we're in, you want to make sure that people know that this guy sells valuable things, right? If he calls me, or if he sends me an email, even if he's from a different company, I'm going to pick up his phone call because I know that he's going to deliver value.
Right. And you've got other people in that same industry who they all know each other, vouching for you, saying you can trust this guy.
Absolutely.
He's not here just to rob your money. He's actually here to help your business grow. And
absolutely. And people move around, right? So at the top echelons of the banking industry or the medical industry, there are people who are constantly being hired away from competitors or complementary companies or just other companies in the same space. You can meet a guy here.
Yeah.
Meet a whole team of people. One guy moves to the next company, and you can just continue that relationship. So that's why, it's absolutely imperative that you maintain a good kind of relationship with these people and a good reputation.
Right. So I think I think at this point I want to ask you, so much of, as I said at the top, I mean, so much of our economy is now going online, right? What happens to the nature of sales? I mean, what do you think? I mean, does the human just get cut out eventually at the end of the story?
How far down the road are we going here? You know, like,
well, as you said, right, in a few years,
20% of groceries will be online.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, you know, I mean, groceries are not like sales
like look,
people.
if you think about right now, for example, I rarely ever make contact with a salesperson. It seems more and more that sales is between businesses at this point. Am I crazy to think that, or?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right. So
it's
wouldn't it be only natural to think that between businesses, even that gets
absolutely,
automated?
Absolutely.
So where does the relationship go from there?
I guess it's a deeper question, right? Like, where do most relationships go?
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, take me there.
Think about that. If we don't commute to work in 20 years, then our relationships become hyper-local, I guess. People you can walk to, and you meet at the park or you meet at the gym. Look, I think that
wait.
where we are today.
Linger on that point for a second. So, in a world of completely remote work, I don't know what happens to the companies, right? That's a whole separate issue. But our lives, it's like we're just traveling back 100,000 years ago, and we only know 150 people. Is that? But in some weird way, right? Because if we're just always online, we could actually know 150 people, but we could virtually know millions.
I don't know. I can't speak for the masses, but like if I look at my own personal life, I think I have the closest relationships with the people that I meet face to face. Right.
Yeah.
So like the people that I have a coffee with, even if it's occasionally once every 6 months.
Yeah.
I have a personal relationship with that person. People that I meet over Zoom and things like that, even employees, I would say it's very hard for. One of the things that we try doing, because we have such a global company, is having our employees meet each other, right? Because there's something that takes away so much tension. We just had it at the company where we were creating a lot of tension because a new employee came in and there was kind of a misunderstanding of how things were working between two employees. And we were able to kind of get rid of all of that tension by just having them meet for 2 days together. So I think that for my personal life, those relationships that are personal and physical are going to be the strongest. I don't see how a metaverse yet takes over those relationships. I personally enjoy smoking cigars, as well as my dad and my brother smoke cigars, and they live in Montreal. So occasionally, by occasionally I mean once every week or every 2 weeks.
That's more than occasionally.
Yeah, we'll sit down and we'll have a cigar via Zoom. Like I'll put my camera up or my computer in front of me, and they'll sit in their office and their computer in front of them, and we'll just have a cigar together and a glass of whiskey or something. Typically, it's like 11 o'clock at night for me, so it's like mid-afternoon for them. So
God, weird.
I gotta appreciate. It's weird.
It's only your own smoke, right?
Yeah, it's not as personal as having the cigar with somebody sitting right next to you.
Right.
But as somebody who's very close to my father and my brother, I just want to have that continued relationship with them. Right. So we do this as often as
you wouldn't join some Zoom club for cigar smokers.
No.
Like that.
No.
Right.
No, and that's only because we have that deep and close relationship that works.
Yeah.
And that's so personal. But if I moved to Israel and I lost touch with all of my close friends from Canada and the US, and we speak occasionally, we WhatsApp.
It's hard.
But it's definitely not, what it was. And so I made friendships with people here, right? People that I'm close to. It's much easier.
No, you need real FaceTime, not the iPhone FaceTime. Yeah.
It's hard to have a bottle of wine with somebody over Zoom, even though I've mastered that with my brother and my father. But, just to do that with regular people, or friends, you can't go to a bar with someone. And,
right.
And
so what do you think happens to sales as we continue down this path?
I think it goes back to the fundamental core of what sales is, and that is delivering value. If you can deliver value, then regardless of how you get to that point, you'll be successful, right? So online, you sell products to people where there's absolutely no face time, right? Especially with consumers today. You buy so many of the things that you buy because they're valuable or because they are worth more than the money that you have in your pocket, right? So you buy your phone because you want to communicate, and you never speak to anyone when you buy a cell phone today, right? Or you,
Yeah. Right.
And so B2B will get there eventually, but I think because the decisions are so large today, people really want to feel comfortable, and there's still a human aspect to that, but it'll eventually disappear, you know.
So here's I'm gonna go on a little rant here about Disney World, and it's related to what you just said. So I took my kids to Disney World for the first time in April. I have 3 kids. Well, one didn't go; he's a baby, but it was the first time. It was cool because like I could see their experience the first time as kids, and it was my first time as an adult paying for this stuff, right? So I had both perspectives running simultaneously in my head, and it's almost as if it wouldn't surprise me if you said to me that, you know, a few years ago, the executives at Disney World, the paragon of moral virtue these days, if they got into a room and said, you know, how much contempt can we have for our customers, and how much contempt can we get away with for our customers? Because you get there and you pay like $150 a head per day, something like that. Don't quote me on the number. And you drive there, you get to the entrance of the gate, and it's like, well, by the way, it's $27 for parking every day. It's like, yeah, that would have been nice to know, or someone could have told me this. Anyway, you get there, and it is absolutely packed with human beings. It's just full, right? All these parks. And, you know, Disney it's packed with people who are waiting an hour or 2 hours for every ride, right?
Right.
And you know, Disney could limit the amount of people that they let in to alleviate some of that, but they don't. They just pack the damn place with as many people as they can. And then also when you get there, you realize that it's most of Disney World, like all those theme parks, is actually stores and restaurants. It's not the rides themselves. So Disney could also add more rides and get rid of some of these stores, but they don't do that either, right? And then in these damn stores, right, your kids are going there for the first time, and they're just being bombarded with like "buy me" signs, you know. And so now you've entered this game of chicken with your kid because you've dragged them halfway across the world, and they're not gonna get a toy. It's, you know. And anyway, you get to these stores. I went to a Harry Potter store with my niece and my son, and spending I think like half an hour searching for a wand. You know, a wand that was corresponds to the wand of one of the characters in the films. And they each pick out their wand. There's not a price tag on the boxes. You get to the cashier, it's $120 for two wands, right? So you know, something that costs like 10 cents or something to make. It's just killing me, right? And what am I going to say? No, I'm at the cashier. So all this, right, is just going on at Disney World. And you finally get to the ride, and then you look at your kid, my kid, and you see his face light up, and he's excited, and he's full of wonder, and all these special effects, and the ride lasts like a minute or 2 minutes, right? And you look at him, and you see that he's making a memory, right? And that's where all the slogans of Disney come in. You know, the most magical place on earth, or what's the other one? Where dreams come true. It's like that's it, right at that moment. They're at the ride, and all that rage that you're feeling as you're just going through this horrible experience, you know, the question that was, you know, that you had answered resolutely before, whether I'm going to patronize this place again, it becomes ambivalent now because, oh my God, there's the slogan there, you know. My point is, I didn't speak to one human throughout the entire process. I actually have no idea how my parents bought tickets to Disney World when we went in the early 90s, before the internet. But I'm wondering if you take the sales process and you identify what it is that is of value to the customer. So in this case, it's implanting that image of pure joy and happiness and wonder and awe in a child. And then you extract the most, you just squeeze the hell out of your customers, right, while they're there, waiting for that damn moment. Is that that's a worry of mine. If you take the human out of there, who can build a relationship and not one based on exploitation. Right?
It's an interesting analogy.
No, there's problems, sorry, because there's problems in the analogy because Disney is monopolistic, right? They're, what do you make? Six Flags? Like, hell no, right? You're going to Disney World. There is no alternative, right? So they
go in off season.
Well, whatever. But no, okay. But even if you go in off season, there's still a wait, and the prices are still outrageous in all those stores and restaurants.
Yeah,
and you still have to pay having parking. So the basic problem persists.
I wonder if there's like a Reddit kind of chat about what's the true cost of Disney, right? Like, because the cost of Disney is definitely not the tickets. Right, that just to get in, that's not the cost.
Like for the consumer.
What's the real cost? Like, what's a typical spend at Disney?
Right.
Like people go to Costco to buy, their fruits and vegetables and leave with a couch and a TV. What's the true cost of Costco? Right? It's like, but that's interesting, right? So we're talking about, I guess, at the end of the day, that's again value, and although you were kind of blindsided, which is, I think unfair in a way, but you were still willing to pay for your children's happiness. There was some price that you were willing to pay, and at some point you would just say, no, that's enough, right? No, we're not buying you 48 wands because one's enough, or whatever. We're not going to every store and buying all that crap that you don't need.
Yeah.
That also goes to another question of like consumerism, right?
Okay.
So like think about,
you're turning the tables on me here.
Yeah, like think about consumerism, right? Like we buy things, or we are in a society where we buy things that we don't need because one reason or another. We see it in movies. Celebrities are wearing it. We just want it. I actually learned, I was a huge victim of consumerism. I still am, like everyone else is, but not as much when it came to clothing. Before I got married, I would go shopping to go shopping. I would go shopping when things were on sale. I'd buy them because they're on sale. When I married my wife, she was buying really expensive items. And I was like, are you spending like $600 on that dress? And I was like, that's preposterous. How could you spend so much money on a dress? When I was buying like $60 shirts on sale for $20, right? Mm-hmm. But the reality is that she went shopping twice a year, and she went with a few $1,000s, and that's what she bought, and that was it.
Right.
And I was going shopping, every week or every 2 weeks. And so I learned a lesson from that. I've changed my shopping habits entirely.
Yeah.
Where I only buy high quality items that I need, and they last me years.
I'm the same.
So,
yeah.
But I think that's kind of consumerism in general. Like you went to Disney World, and these things that you didn't need, all of a sudden you needed, or your kids didn't need. And I wonder if that's something that we should be. I don't wonder. Like how much emphasis should we be putting on this with our kids, right? So, my kids. So, for example, my son, we went shopping. He needed a new pair of shoes, and he just wanted a second pair of shoes, right? And he said, well, you have multiple pairs of shoes. And I said, yeah, but I have, my shoe size has been the same for many years, and I've accumulated a few different pairs of shoes for different occasions, and you have 2-3 occasions, right? You have school and you have soccer, right? So that's it. So you don't actually need 12 pairs of shoes, right? You need maybe 1 or 2 pairs of shoes. And so, and he was upset for a little bit, but we talked about it. And it's like, should we be teaching our kids about, this kind of, I would say negative aspect of consumerism, buying things that you don't need.
Yeah.
Right. And trying to be wise about not only because of, the cost of it, but also just for value. Right. This is something you don't need. You shouldn't buy it. And then I think a lot of adults could also be trained on that, myself included. Right. I mean, there are things that I still buy that I don't need, but
is the point you're trying to make, don't go to Disney World?
No, I don't know. I think it's going to Disney World is an experience. You want to give something extra to your children. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. But I left there with a bitter taste in my mouth, right? As that rant proved, right?
Right.
And that isn't the kind of relationship that you described, where you're friends with the person that you had that months-long sales process, or because you delivered on what you said you were going to deliver. This was completely the opposite. It's like I get a bill and then I get another bill and then.
Yeah, I mean, you were a victim of Disney World. You're a victim of Disney.
That's it. I'm starting a group.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe take your kids on a hike. Take them to Niagara Falls.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
It's just, I don't know. I guess maybe the lesson is to do some more research on these things and see what you're going to get into. I think know what you're getting into.
Victim blaming, I say. Yeah, I mean, I think my I'm still worried about it. In this world where you eliminate the human more and more from that process, right? There isn't an address to say, look, something's starting to go wrong, right? The relationship is tilting way too much in one direction in terms of who's getting the value there. If you don't have an address to talk to.
But also value, I think, is becoming more and more evident. You can't bullshit your way through value anymore as much as you were able to, right? Like, I think about like a vacuum cleaner salesperson in the 60s, right? He went around with a car full of vacuum cleaners. He walked into somebody's house. He vacuumed the dust. They saw that it worked, and he left, right? If it was a faulty vacuum cleaner, they're stuck with the vacuum cleaner, right?
Yeah.
Today, you don't have that anymore. Today, if you buy a vacuum cleaner on Amazon and it doesn't work, you get your money back. You could probably keep the vacuum cleaner as well, right?
And there are all those comments from people saying, don't buy this, and you can get a better value.
Ratings and things like that. You typically buy things that are the most valuable, or at least proven, or have ratings or reviews. And so I think that B2B technology is still is starting with ratings. There are some like rating systems here and there, and you have all these things, but it's not really that strong yet. But eventually we get to a place where all the software you buy is great, right? All the services you buy are great. And if they're subpar, then a competitor will come in and create something better. So you constantly have to be better. You constantly have to be improving everything that you're selling. So from that perspective, I'm not too concerned. Something like Disney World, like I wonder what the ratings are in Disney World. Like, can you have adult ratings and children ratings? Like,
I mean, listen, I don't know. I haven't looked at their financial statements ever actually, but I suppose they're raking in a ton of money.
Yeah,
COVID accepted, of course.
They've learned how to.
So that's all the information I think you need, right? It's got this brand, it's got this mystique, and it's got people like me saying, you know what, something to do for a few days with my kids, and I'll give them this memory, right? That they won't remember.
The memory.
Yeah, they have the memory. And they won't have any idea until they get to my age and they have to do this with their kids, the pain that that I had to go through, right? And it's not just me, there are all these other parents there sitting and waiting and just so frustrated, visibly frustrated, having to be in that sardine can waiting in line forever.
It's interesting. Like, is there value? What is the value of that? And had you known in advance that you would have spent on all these things, and you would be able to potentially budget for them, right? Would you be less frustrated?
It's a great question.
So, like, if you went to Disney World online and you went to their website and they said, hey, like, notice for parents, like, it's the best place on earth, but budget for $30 of parking, probably $200-300 per child in toys or shit that they don't need.
Yeah.
Another $100 on restaurants or whatever. Like, would you be happier leaving Disney World because, you know, I mean, you were able to, you knew what you were getting into?
It's a good question. It's a really good question. Yeah, it's hard to say because I didn't have that experience, but now I found out that information the hard way. So I don't need Disney to tell me that. Now I know.
You should start a Reddit like post or give a rating on Google or something.
Yeah.
That's another good thing, by the way. Google ratings, right? Like and star reviews. I do reviews when I have a great experience. I give a review.
I never know what to think of those things.
If you have a great experience, you should give a review. Because think about it, the restaurant or the whatever place invested, and they gave you a huge amount of value for your money.
Yeah.
And you should first of all, you should let other people know about it, and you should also appreciate the institution that you were just at, and say this is a great place, so other people will know, and you become part of this community of people who are giving good reviews or bad reviews. And then also for the restaurant who's invested all this energy in creating the perfect sandwich or the perfect dining experience, just to recognize them.
What's so interesting about it just occurred to me now that about ratings is that, unlike in real life, when you're suffering, you know you're suffering, and when you're happy, you're not exactly sure. I guess I would trust more a positive review of whatever, some product or some place. I never know exactly when someone is writing a really negative review how authentic or genuine that is, because that person could just be really pissed off.
Yeah.
There could have been a whole host of reasons why they were so angry and bringing that negativity to that place.
Right.
Or maybe they're just really whiny and I'm not as whiny as they are, or
Right.
maybe it's vice versa. And so I don't know what to do with reviews, honestly.
Well, my role with reviews is the more the merrier. If I look at a place and there's like 1,000 reviews, then I'm like, okay, this is, if it's 4.5 stars, it's 4.5 stars.
Right.
But if it has 3 reviews and 2 of them are good and 1 is bad, the 2 good ones are from the owner and the bad one is from the first unhappy customer. It's
Right. Interesting. So it's interesting how like that mechanism for vouching that you described earlier, it's actually now shifting towards the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. Like whenever I look for anything, a restaurant, bar, anything, I'll go into the city, I'll go into Google Maps, I'll go filter by reviews, and then filter by more than 50 reviews or more than 100. And then you really end up with like these really great places. We were in Milan a few like two months ago.
Yeah.
And we were in the taxi and we needed to find somewhere to go out. And I basically did the same filter, 4.5 stars or 5 stars, with I found a place with like 4,000 4-star reviews and like 20 1-star, 2-star reviews. I was like, this is our place. And we came and it was magnificent. It was like one of the best places you could. It was just kind of little tiny place. Like you wouldn't find it if you went to like whattodoinmilan.com or whatever.
Whoa.
But you just find like these great places like that, right? So and then you have to contribute. You must contribute. If you're enjoying it, you must contribute at least at the extremes, right? At the really worst extreme, like just tell people, this is I felt bad doing it, but I went jeeping with my family in Israel to like this ATV place, and the owner was super rude, and he was yelling at us from the first second, right? And
what is it about you that people need to yell at you all the time?
Yeah, it's like every time somebody yells at me, they get a negative review on Google, but it really happens. But this guy, like, it was the only really bad review that I gave to a place. It was such a negative experience. We spend a ton of money. You take the family, you get yelled at from the first second. You know, it's supposed to be a fun experience, and it's just terrible. I gave a bad review. I said, guys, I don't mean I'm not a negative person, but this guy was really negative. It was really, I would avoid it if I could. And then I go to restaurants all the time, and whenever I have a fantastic experience, I write that as well.
Wow.
So now when you go online and you want to know which restaurant to go to, you can get those great experiences.
So yeah, you think we're moving in a world where the sales process is actually starting just with ourselves, right? There's a product you can buy, and then a zillion people are going to review it, and that's the sales process.
Yeah, and it goes back to where we started. If we want to bring this full circle, is about delivering value.
Yeah.
And if you're delivering value and you have conviction in that value, then it's golden, right? If you can really deliver that value.
Yeah. Amen to that, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a good place to end it, man.
Yeah.
Mendel, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Wish you lots of success.
Thank you. And hey, man, hope to see you soon.
Yeah, you too.
All right, man. Bye.